Everett Williams. I was Peace Corps Chile, University of Concepcion, 1965 to 1968.
Don Dietz, Chile, 1968 to 70.
My name is Sonny Lowe. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Chile, 1968 to 1970. I was a volunteer with the city planning program assigned to the Chilean Ministry of Housing. And I was assigned to Coquimbo, Chile, which is about 400 kilometers north of Santiago, the capital. It was a wonderful experience. I could say that it was the start of the Chilean desert. However, I can say that I spent 2 years literally on the beach. We were surrounded by beaches. I developed an appreciation for Chilean pisco, which is a derivative of wine, grapes. And so the other thing that I guess about another experience, about my volunteer experience, I got to go back to Chile back in 1989 when I was working with the U.S. Agency for International Development. I went back to Coquimbo on the bus, just like the way I did it when I was a volunteer from Santiago. Spent a wonderful weekend back there, located a number of my Chilean there was a Chilean family whose daughter I was very interested in at the time, but she had other priorities.
My name is David Mather. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Chile, 1968 to 70. I was up in the foothills of the Andes in a little community called Cufeo, which is near Valdivia in the lake area of southern Chile. Maybe the story of when I was involved in forestry, reforestation. I had to cover a huge, how much time do I have?
Go for it.
Okay. Huge territory, and where I lived and worked was like stepping back in the 19th century where travel was by foot, by oxen, or by horse. And to visit all the plantations of Pinot Insigne, which is Monterey pine, I had to ride hours and hours and hours, sometimes 6-7 hours a day on horseback. Consequently, I learned from the family I was living with that I was riding my horse right into the ground. So I needed another horse to share the duties. Well, when I got my second horse, which was a much bigger, stronger horse, the family I lived with thought that it was such a fancy horse that I should dress up in huaso regalia. A huaso is the Chilean counterpart of our cowboy. And that's what I'm wearing right now. And so I was dressed up like this, except I had leather chaps on and I had spurs, and I was all duded up. And they said, you gotta go visit the nearest neighbor and show off your new horse and regalia. And so I did, and but I didn't realize that this new horse, it was my very first ride, had a tendency that when you tighten the cinch, it stuck out its belly. After about 5 or 10 minutes, its belly would go back to normal. Consequently, your cinch was very loose. And as I approached, there was a young woman, a sister of, there was a brother and a sister that lived in this little farm, and she came out to greet me very politely, and they had the type of gate that had bars that you'd pull out and across. And seeing how I was dressed up as a huaso, no self-respecting huaso would ever dismount to pull the bars. I leaned over and pulled the first bar back. I leaned farther over to pull the second bar back, and that's when the saddle let go. And so I did a somersault and rolled up at her feet, and they, of course, are very, very polite, and she did her best not to laugh, covering her hands, or her mouth with her hand, but soon burst into hysterics. So that's one anecdotal.
I'm Char Thompson. I was in Chile 69 to 71 in the village of Ovalle.
Okay, now can you...
We were building self-help homes, but obviously I think they knew more about it than we did. And One of the goofy things that I tried to do was an appropriate technology refrigerator, which was a cloth with water on the top, but then they asked me, well, what do you put in the refrigerator? And they didn't have anything they wanted to put in a refrigerator. So I didn't promote appropriate refrigerators.
Good. That's fine. Let's have another one.
I do remember maybe he was a 10-year-old. He came up to me and he said, why do you have this policy on Cuba? And as a young woman, I couldn't really quite explain why we had this policy on Cuba. But I learned more from those folks about the politics of the world and nationalization of copper. And I mean, we were privileged to be there when Allende campaigned in our poblacion. Pablo Neruda came to our poblacion. So I really learned a whole lot more than I ever gave to those folks. I really love those folks.
Siebert. My wife and I spent 2 years in Chile and a year in Colombia. The years in Chile were 69 to 72, and Colombia was 72 to 73. And so it's been a few years. In terms of having specific instances, I'm not sure I can actually even recall, but if there are people that are listening to this that have an interest in Peace Corps, I would certainly encourage them to take a harder look at it. I think it was probably one of the greater experiences of our lives, and we would have missed an incredible opportunity if we really hadn't joined the Peace Corps.
I was in Chile from 1995 to 97, and just enjoyed the country, the geography a lot. It was interesting to eat eel soup and barnacles and a lot of interesting seafood right there. The ocean's always close by, and it was a really good chance to see a lot of the country and a lot of the wonderful mountains and oceans, playas, deserts, the whole thing.